What would happen if you empathised with everyone?
So if I'm looking at your mouth, I feel like my mouth is moving.
Can you fly with the birds?
Yeah.
My name is Dr. Jack Lewis. I'm a neuroscientist and I'm on a journey to meet people with incredible brains.
Your brain is extraordinary.
With my magician friend Pete Heat, I want to explore the most vital of our vital organs.
I've got my teenage brain back.
Coming up, I discover everything from hyper-empathy
It's really weird.
to the zero empathy of psychopaths.
My top question is, should I be in prison?
We find out what triggers empathy
I saw you fall and you went, and you didn't get up straight away.
and get a glimpse of the future of empathy in virtual reality.
I can put this headset on and see the world in a different perspective.
It's time to make a deeper connection with those around you.
Join me to uncover the secrets of the brain. Empathy, our brain's natural capacity to mind read. See a face, a subtle change in body language, and dedicated neural circuitry gives us an instant understanding of that person's mood and sometimes even what they're thinking.
Empathy refers to any situation where seeing someone else's state generates the same state in yourself.
Empathy is the ability to put yourselves in the position of somebody else, to really feel what it's like to be there. For a social species like humans, that is absolutely key to our ability to get on and to work collectively.
But how does this powerful and sometimes even spooky connection form within the brain? And what are the true limits to this spectacular mental ability? I've come to Liverpool to meet someone whose experience of the world is very different from the rest of us.
Fiona Torrance has made headlines with her truly extraordinary brain condition called mirror touch synesthesia. This mirror touch condition is so rare and bizarre that it was only diagnosed in the last decade. And it is revolutionising what we thought we knew about empathy and how the brain does it.
Her extraordinary brain can do some pretty incredible gymnastics, and I'm really looking forward to finding out more. You must be Fiona.
Hi, Jack. Pleased to meet you.
Pleased
Hi.
to meet you. So how does your brain experience the world differently from others? I've heard a little about it.
Just what I see, I feel. So if I look at you, I feel as if your body's my body. If I look at your hands and you're rubbing the inside, it feels like I feel touch on the palm of my hand.
Wow, that's so strange that you can feel me touching the palm of my hand. That's
Yeah,
extraordinary.
it's when I look at your hand, I feel as if I'm touching it.
So if I was doing it behind my back, it
No,
wouldn't
because
switch
I'm
that
not seeing your
sensation.
hand. No, but then it's your mouth. So if I'm looking at your mouth, I feel like my mouth is moving.
Wow. Just stop for a minute and digest that. Fiona forms an instant, deep, empathic connection with anyone she sees. Whatever she watches them experiencing, she feels herself.
It's the lady over there, the way she's holding the book. I feel like I've got a cup against my lips and a froth against my lips. But if I look away and I'm looking at you,
It just disappears.
It disappears and I switch immediately to feeling as if your body is my body. So it's gender fluid, yeah.
That's amazing. This probably sounds incredible, weird, perhaps even a touch unbelievable. It seems more akin to science fiction than anything I've ever read about in a neuroscience textbook. But in the last decade, Fiona and other people with mirror touch have been tested and proven to have this extraordinary ability.
Mirror touch synesthesia is a rare experience where people feel a physical sensation of touch on their own body when they see touch to other people. These people are literally experiencing the sensations of others when they see them being touched or see them in pain.
Fiona lived with this condition for years before it was ever discovered by science.
It does sound a little bit like teleportation. So do sometimes people think maybe that you're just making it up?
Well, if somebody can't feel that level of fluidity or the level of looking at somebody and feeling like their body's your body, if they can't feel that, they will never understand.
They'll just doubt you.
And I can sometimes feel quite lonely or misunderstood.
I mean, it seems like a form of hyper-empathy. Would you say that's true?
I would say so. It's interesting because It happens automatically, so it's happening very, very fast. It is heightened empathy.
Your brain is extraordinary, it really is.
I'm trying to map this onto what I already know about empathy and the brain. And for me, the first clue is that Fiona has to see an event in order to be carried into it. So if I was doing it behind my back, it wouldn't
because
switch
I'm
that
not seeing
sensation?
my hand, no.
We all know that our brains enable us to mirror what we see other people doing around us. See a happy face, and scans show that you feel some of their happiness too. See someone in pain and you too will flinch a little. It's the brain's way of helping us to engage with others. And in Fiona's case, I'm guessing that this mirroring must involve the somatosensory cortex, that region of the brain that processes and creates our sense of touch. But Fiona's experiences go far, far beyond anything I've ever learned about the mirror system.
So it just occurred to me, looking at your beautiful dog, is it just humans that this works for?
If I stroke her head like that, I feel like my head's been stroked. It's the same as feeling that.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, what if I do? Like if I stroke?
That I feel in my nose.
Really?
Yeah. That's what I love about the animals.
For example, when you watch your dog bounding around,
Yeah.
do you feel that motion?
I do feel that motion.
I mean, she can really move. So can you feel yourself?
Yeah, I feel that.
Can you feel yourself moving at that speed?
I can get giddy or giggly.
Can you fly with the bird?
Yeah.
Do you feel that flight?
I feel it. I feel it's like a lift every time it moves, and the fluttering, and the move, and the fluttering, like if you were in a lift.
Fiona doesn't just feel the touch and movements of the animals, she actually gets an emotional response to it. To what degree is this thing that your brain can do so powerfully a blessing or a curse?
Well, I suppose it depends on how you manage it. I don't think I could function without it. I wouldn't survive without it.
So without it, you wouldn't be you? It's extraordinary. I've been studying the brain for over 20 years, and I have never, ever come across a case even vaguely similar to Fiona. What her brain can do is genuinely extraordinary, and I am completely foxed. I have no idea what it is that's going on in her brain. So there's only one thing to do. I'm going to send her off to see a neuroscience colleague of mine to find out if he can get to the bottom of what's going on in her brain.
While Fiona meets a world leader in mirror touch research, I want to dig deeper into how mirroring works in all our brains, to see if there's a link. And get insights into Fiona's experiences by studying the opposite extreme, the brains of people who have no empathy at all.
But first, my friend Pete Heat wants to prove that all of us can have magical flashes of empathy, even if they're not quite as powerful as Fiona's.
We've got some little cards with some little emojis on them. Okay, so we got like a smiley face, love-struck shark.
Angry.
Thank you, that's what I was going to say, but I wanted to check. And a sort of sad one, okay? And exactly the same over here, so we've got the same, in fact, let's lay them out so they match. We've got exactly the same 5. So 2 sets of matching cards, right?
Yep.
1 set's for me, and 1 set is for you. Okay,
So far, so normal, using a bit of empathy to recognise the emoji emotions. But here comes the magic mirroring.
Normally, if I do a kind of mind-reading trick, what I try and do is I try and empathise with the other person. I try and put myself in their shoes, and I try and think, what would I do if I was you? So we're going to do something like that, except it's you that's going to be reading my mind. So I'm going to choose one random. So I'm going to put that there. That's my choice. In a second, you're going to put one down, face down again, like that, there for me. Think what it is that I've put down, and you do the same. Okay, yes, we're going to go with this one next. Okay, what have I gone for? And you do the same. Going to go for... Okay. If these are all right, then obviously we'd both be left with the same one as each other now, right? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. We're both left with a heart at the end, which is a good sign. That's a good start. All right. but that's just one of the 5. If you can pick up your stack for me and just pick up the top card of the stack. So 1, 2, 3. That's good.
That's insane.
And the very first one we put down.
Wow. Wow. I don't know what to say. Did you just see that?
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Oh my
Okay. I think that's a success, isn't it? You did well. How did you do that?
That's weird. How did you do that? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. How do you do this? I'm really shocked.
There was no way he'd be able to tell what I was feeling or me what he was feeling through the cards, but I was proven wrong apparently, so it is possible.
So was that empathy, or magic, or both?
I feel like to have empathy that extreme would be quite scary because feeling your own emotions itself can be quite scary in itself. So when you're feeling other people's as well, I feel like it could be quite overwhelming.
To me, empathy is like feeling like what other people are feeling, or even if you can't like physically feel the same thing as them, like understand what they're going through.
And this is absolutely key to understanding empathy. It helps us connect with each other better. It helps us to know not just what the other person's thinking, but what they're feeling.
Empathy is helpful because understanding other people's experiences allows us to interact and act appropriately with them. And as humans, we're social animals, and social interactions are really important for our happiness, they're important for our health.
With all of this, it's important to home in on what makes empathy special. To find out, why don't you try this little test?
Take a look at this. What's going on between these two? What do you think they're feeling? What about now? Did you feel bad for the orange circle being abandoned, the blue triangle being chased? Our emotional circuitry is so powerful it can even be applied to geometric objects. But is this empathy? It might just be sympathy.
Empathy has a different neurological signature to sympathy. So sympathy is just saying, oh, I'm so sorry you feel that way. Empathy is also feeling the emotion itself.
So how can we spark true empathy? Can we get people to experience a deeper connection, closer to what Fiona feels? Well, Pete thinks he can use a form of empathy to connect with you and control your actions. There. Did you yawn too? We all know that yawning can be infectious. It can sometimes be very annoying. But I bet you didn't know that incredibly, studies have shown that dogs will also catch human yawns. And vice versa. So maybe Fiona's cross-species connection isn't as bizarre as it first seems. Now for the second part of the challenge. Can you stop yawning and pay attention, please? Scanning studies suggest that contagious yawning is caused by a specific form of brain circuitry known as mirror neurons. These cells fire automatically whenever we see someone perform an action we're familiar with. See a yawn, and the mirror neurons will trigger preparation for a yawn of your own.
Mirror neurons respond when we see somebody doing something that we ourselves can do. We know that they're there to help us recognize and simulate what other people do. We don't know if this is a whole separate system or if it uses our brain's own mental model of itself, of our own actions, as a starting point.
Mirror neurons are thought to be an important part of empathy. They're not the only part of empathy, but they might play a role in helping you to slip into somebody else's shoes.
Now I'm going to explore just how far we can take the power of mirror neurons and see what, other than Sleepy Pete's yawns, will spark them into action. With the help of my friends here, young Huey and Dotty the dog, I'm going to set up some scenarios that should get the public's empathy mechanisms firing. Both Dottie and Huey are going to spend a cold, dismal half an hour sat on a busy shopping street, looking to all the world like they've been abandoned. Poor Huey. Poor Dottie. Don't worry, their mum and owner's just hiding a few metres away. Meanwhile, I'm going to try and trigger empathy in a more dramatic way.
I'm going to do that by simulating a bicycle accident, writhing around on the floor with my terrible acting, seeming like I'm in pain, and see if I can generate enough empathy in people's brains to get them to come over and help me. The question is, how many will actually stop?
Most people get a flash of empathy and rush straight over to my aid.
I've done my shoulder.
But Dottie and Huey are still sat on the streets, sad, cold, alone, abandoned. Maybe shoppers' brains are distracted by the sales. 30 minutes in and I think it might be time to explore why I've been helped by 5 people and poor old Dottie and Huey by none.
Thank you very much for your help. We're doing a little thing on empathy.
Yeah.
And it's really nice of you that you came over. Would you mind if we bring the cameras over?
No.
Can I just ask you what motivated you to come over and help?
But it's not just because I'm a cyclist, but I saw you fall and you went, and you didn't get up straight away. As soon as you said, I hurt my shoulder, I was going to say to you, I've done that same thing. Right?
So at that moment you empathised with me?
That moment, I really empathised with you.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
thank you so much. How could you tell what I was feeling?
Well, I read your body and I felt like you having pain. Thank you very much.
I couldn't ask for anything more.
I know what it's like to fall off a bike, so good job you landed on something soft. I've been in the same situation.
Today, we came out looking for empathy, and what we found is that a sweet, lost-looking kid is just not sufficient in this day and age to trigger those empathy circuits. Neither is a lost-looking dog. But what did work is witnessing an accident firsthand in the moment.
Huey and Dottie may well have been in need of help, but standing stock still was ambiguous. But my bike crash was a dramatic, action-packed scene. Something people's mirror neurons could instantly recognise and engage with, helping to put them into my shoes.
I've done that same thing.
I read your body and I felt like you having pain.
It's an instant reaction.
Now I want to get a true sense of Fiona's extraordinary levels of empathy by studying the opposite extreme. There's another small group of people who I'm certain would have walked straight past my bike crash. People whose brains simply don't do empathy.
Here we are in a prison. What I'm going to do is find out once and for all whether or not I'm a psychopath.
I've come to meet Dr. Luna Centofanti, who studies psychopathy and its relationship to empathy.
So it's a personality disorder, and it's been identified since the 1800s, really. And it's people who don't feel empathy for other people, they don't feel guilt, they're kind of charming, manipulative.
Correctly identifying psychopaths is notoriously difficult work, but it's believed that some of history's most famous serial killers shared this condition. Studying the brains of psychopaths is a relatively new field of neuroscience. Various scanning studies have reported that over half a dozen major brain areas seem to be involved. But Luna and other academics are working to find the personality types these brains produce. And she is going to put me to the test.
So what exactly have you got in store for me?
So I'm going to show you some emotional faces, and I'm going to ask you to kind of read the emotion in the faces, so identify, recognize the emotion in the face. So they're, the basic emotions, happy, sad, mad, scared, things like that. So go ahead and give it a try. When you're ready, just press R.
Okay. That guy looks seriously moody, so he looks angry with me. I'm going to go with anger. I'm going for full marks here. She looks miffed.
What Luna measures here is the core emotional aspects of empathy. True empathy isn't just getting an insight into the physical experiences of others. It's about transporting ourselves into their mental, emotional state. The brain's limbic system is absolutely fundamental to generating and feeling those emotions. This highly complex cluster of structures lies deep within the brain.
In our limbic systems, we have two almond-shaped structures, each called an amygdala, and this is where our basic human emotions stem from. Emotions like fear, anger, sadness, love, and trust. When we are looking at someone else and seeing their facial expressions and how they're behaving, we essentially mimic that within our own limbic system, and then that tells us how we would be feeling if we were behaving like that. And that's the basis of understanding how other people are feeling and resonating with them emotionally.
And if I am truly capable of empathy, then my own limbic system should be mirroring the emotion I see on the faces in front of me. And I'm really hoping that it is.
I don't want to be a psychopath. Okay, he's angry. Biting her lip, coy, seductive. These aren't here. Oh, I'm emotionally incontinent. Well, she looks kind of disgusted, I suppose. Oh, seems I've finished. My top question is,
Yes.
should I be in prison?
You should not be in prison. You did very well.
What do you see?
So, if you remember, we looked at angry, disgust, fear, happy, sad, and surprise. You got 100% correct on happy, and you got 100% correct on angry. And you only missed one out of the disgust, missed one out on fear, and missed one out on sad.
Okay, so I function okay.
Yeah. You can read emotions in other people's faces.
That's such a relief.
But crucially, and perhaps a little worryingly for me, this is only half the story. Sometimes the psychopath brain can use a form of empathy to recognize the emotions on the faces, but their limbic systems miss the next critical step of true empathy.
So it measures how well you can identify, imagine, and kind of understand the how and why of other people's emotions. So it's really cognitive, understanding.
As opposed to?
As opposed to emotional empathy, where you're kind of putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Really kind of, their emotions are resonating with you quite strongly. So those two things can be separated, but usually if you can understand accurately what somebody else is feeling, you're then able to feel what they're feeling, feel empathic concern for them.
So outside of the prison population, what percentage of people in general are psychopathic?
Based on research around the world, estimates are vary between 1% and 3%. So
that many?
Mm-hmm.
That's scary, isn't it?
It's very scary. They make up about 20% of the prison population, even though outside they're 1 in 100. So their crimes tend to be of a more violent nature than other criminals, for example.
I'm really pleased to find out that I'm not a psychopath. Probably. And one of the most interesting things I've discovered today is that psychopaths aren't just in there. They're not just criminals locked up in prison. They're out here in huge numbers. And the most interesting thing that I learned today is that there's a huge difference between cognitive and emotional sides of empathy. It's not just about being able to recognize emotions in other people's faces, but your ability to transport yourself into their body and feel what they're feeling. Psychopaths can do one of these things, but not the other. So do you fancy trying a similar test to Luna's for yourself? However you do, don't worry about it. It's just a snap test. It's not diagnostic. For this version, we're stripping the test back to its core basics, just the eyes. The eyes are said to be the windows to the soul, and for empathy, that's certainly true. Look into these eyes and see whether you can use your brain's empathy circuits to guess the emotion. Round 1. What does this look like to you? Happiness or surprise? It's happiness. Round 2. Intrigued or sad? Bad luck, that was a flash of sadness. Distress or pleasant surprise? Well, that one was distress. Mistrust or shock? Looks like I don't trust you. Finally, anger or excitement. Don't worry, I rarely get angry, and that should have given you a burst of empathic excitement. So, how did you score? Maybe you need to take the full test.
So we've now explored empathy from the two extremes. At one end, we've got Fiona with her extraordinary degree of connection, not just with other people, but even animals too. And then at the other, we've got psychopaths, whose empathy brain circuits simply don't fire properly.
Thankfully, I passed my exam. I have emotional empathy, despite what some of my ex-girlfriends might say. Now Fiona has her own test to take, with one of the pioneering scientists working to explore mirror touch and empathy within the brain.
I'm here to meet Michael Bannacy. He's an expert in the field. I've been living with a condition that I know about, but I'm looking forward to finding out more information from an expert about it, so that it helps me be able to explain what I live with.
Michael Bannacy has been studying mirror touch for a decade. He's one of a handful of pioneers who are now explaining Fiona's condition.
The study of empathy is a really exciting area, and it's something that over the last decade or so in social neuroscience has really exploded. There's a lot of interest in understanding what we share and also understanding how we share it.
Meeting with Michael is a unique opportunity for Fiona to learn more about a condition she's lived with her whole life. And for him, it's a rare chance to test the theories he's developing about that condition.
Mirror touch synesthesia is related to empathy in a few different ways. These people are literally experiencing the sensations of others when they see them being touched or see them in pain. More broadly, we've also found that mirror touch synesthetes have heightened self-reported empathy. And so, for instance, if they perceive somebody crying and so on and so forth, do they have greater empathy for them? And there is evidence to point to that as well. Hi Fiona, thanks for coming along. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and run a quick experiment just to test your mirror touch. On the screen you're going to see somebody's hands being touched. Okay. And at the same time we're going to apply touch to your own hand. And then at the end of it we'll talk you through the result.
Michael's test works by giving Fiona two different stimuli simultaneously. She watches right and left hands being touched on a screen. Meanwhile, electronic sensors apply an actual touch to her own hands.
Left.
She has to call out whether her own left or right hand is being touched, ignoring the hands that she sees on the screen.
They go quite fast, don't they? But that's all right, sorry. So it's weird, I feel a bit confused.
Sounds simple, but her condition means it's mind-scramblingly difficult for Fiona.
Both. I'm utterly confused.
Thanks very much for doing the study. How did you find it?
A bit confusing. Made me feel a bit scrambled.
I'm sorry about that. It is potentially quite confusing because you've got seen touch, felt touch and synesthetic touch potentially going on. So what we've got up on the screen here, this is the data from the task. And what we find, if we look at the data here, the red bars here, this is the percentage of mirror touch errors that you made on the task. And as you see, you made around about 20% mirror touch errors on the task.
That's quite a lot, didn't it?
Yeah, it was quite a lot.
The errors are where Fiona called out the wrong hand, saying left when she was actually touched on the right, or vice versa. Other people without mirror touch don't seem to have this problem. Fiona made 20 times more errors than average.
So that group doesn't get any confusion?
No, not at all. Because for them, they're being touched on their left hand and they're not getting any extra touch from what they're seeing.
Okay.
It's only people who are getting that extra touch from what they're seeing that get this degree of confusion.
Michael can map Fiona's results onto the wider pattern that's emerging as he tests people with mirror touch. In longer running experiments, he's been able to study people with the condition in MRI scanners, building up a picture of how the condition works within the brain and what causes it. With her test results matching the pattern, Michael's now ready to reveal his findings and theories to Fiona.
And you see some blue regions on the brain here. These blue regions, these are parts of the brain that are active when we are touched. And you see quite predominantly there's regions here, these are called the somatosensory cortices. This is the primary kind of sensory brain area responsive to touch. You know, so if I touched you, that type of brain area become active. Now, what's interesting is the green areas are parts of the brain that become active when you observe touch to other people, when we all do. And as you see, there's this overlap between green and blue.
That's Michael's first breakthrough, direct evidence of some form of mirroring happening inside the somatosensory cortex, the area of the brain that processes touch. Michael's scans show that area of the brain being activated both when people feel the touch and when they simply see it. The cortices respond this way in every person he's tested, but those people who have mirror touch, like Fiona, react to the mirroring in a very different way to the rest of us.
Now, the interesting thing is, for most of us, this is implicit, it's unconscious, but in mirror touch synesthesia, what we find is people overactivate this network, they hyperactivate it.
What could be causing this extreme version of the basic mirroring we all feel? Michael's second breakthrough is finding a common theme in the structure of the brains of people with mirror touch.
If we do MRI scans, we find structural brain differences in other networks in the brain, not just brain areas involved in mirroring touch. So we find that mirror touch synesthetes show less brain volume, so less grey matter volume, in the right temporoparietal junction. Now, this region is really involved in your ability to represent yourself and somebody else, so allow you to distinguish between yourself and somebody else.
The objective about just feelings.
Yeah, and it's also involved in the ability to control representations of yourself and somebody else, meaning potentially they have problems in discriminating themselves from other people.
The right temporoparietal junction sits just above and behind your right ear. At this crucial location, all the senses come together. It's connected with the somatosensory cortex, as well as areas that give us our senses of sight and hearing. It's also connected to that key emotional network, the limbic system. The TPJ plays a critical role in creating our sense of who we are. It's heavily involved during social interaction and has even been linked to out-of-body experiences. And Michael believes that people with mirror touch have less grey matter at this vital hub.
By studying people with mirror touch synesthesia, we don't only learn about them and their condition, but we also can start to ask questions about empathy and social understanding in all of us. And more recently, we've tried to train self-other representations in people that don't have mirror touch to see if we can maybe make them more empathic or better able to control their empathy.
I've really enjoyed meeting Michael Benessy today, and I think the other exciting part is to know that there's other mirror touch synesthetes out there that are like myself, and that we are contributing to an understanding of the brain and how others may learn empathy. It's a wonderful, wonderful to know that.
So what have we learned? Well, most of us can feel empathy, but very few of us to the degree Fiona can.
If I stroke her head, I feel like my head's been stroked.
The brain's ability to mirror is a key stepping stone to achieving empathy, replicating what we see and feel from the people around us. Michael's study shows that Fiona has a hyperactive capacity for this mirroring. For her, it's like actually experiencing what she sees rather than just sensing it. And the root cause is in the right temporoparietal junction, the TPJ. In Fiona, its role in defining where the border lies between her own bodily experience and those of others is completely blurred. Time to start applying some of these discoveries. Michael's using his findings to blur other people's sense of self and other. Does this mean I can see a glimpse of what life is like for Fiona? And finally, can we use our new understanding of how the brain creates a sense of self in combination with some 21st century technology to boost empathy in the real world? But first, Pete wants to use what we've learnt about emotional empathy and a little magic to read minds.
Do you think it's possible to tell what someone's thinking just by looking at them?
No. Maybe, no. Yeah, maybe a bit.
To a degree, right? But we're going to try and do something a bit more specific. So I would like you to think of a specific memory. that is associated with an emotion. I want you to imagine that you are actually in the memory and you're feeling, particularly when you're feeling the emotion that you were feeling at the time as well, and I'm going to try and pick up on that. Okay, now...
Pete will try to read the mind and discover the memory, just by magically reading the emotion in the face.
It's a positive, it's a sort of positive emotion, but it's not just pure happiness, is it? There's something else to it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there's almost a bit of like exhaustion or a bit of like. Yeah. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you're not on your own, is that right?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So you're with some people, friends. Yeah. Good. Okay. Okay. And there's a group of you, so maybe like I don't know, 4 or 5, something like that. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to get my finger on the actual emotion though, and it's something like you're almost relieved, or you're Is that for your face? Yeah. Your face lit up there. It's a bit of a guess, but something like a gig or a music festival or a holiday. No, is that exactly it? Yeah. A festival. Oh, okay, great. And so you're on your way back, and you're all hungover and knackered. Is that it?
That's so weird.
Oh wow, cool. I think there's an animal or some animals. Yeah. Okay. Quite scary animals, is that right? Yeah. Okay, because there's a bit of fear there as well. They can't get you, but they're there. So I'm guessing something like a kind of safari situation or something like that. Bit of a guess, but is that what? Like Africa, South Africa, somewhere? Yeah. You're a teacher, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, and it's something to do with that, isn't it? Yeah. It's something to do with actually how you got that job, like the sort of qualifying or.
You're bang on.
Is that exactly it? Yeah. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
It was amazing, really. I mean, yeah, he got it bang on, so what can you say? And I'm a massive cynic, skeptic. I don't believe in that kind of stuff, but yeah, very impressive.
I can't even begin to think how he does it. Fantastic, he's a wizard.
Even though most of us use empathy to connect with other people's brains dozens of times a day, we're truly blown away when its insights are this powerful.
I don't see how he could even know what I was thinking at all. I get how he could know that it was like a happy memory, but I don't get how he could know where and what we were doing. It was so weird, like dead on. Yeah.
I think people empathise with each other all the time, don't they? It's one of the things that makes us human, I guess.
So, we've used mirror neurons to spark empathy in passers-by. Pete has used magical empathy to tap into the memories of complete strangers. But can I go further and get a personal glimpse of how deep empathy goes for people with mirror touch?
When I first met Fiona, frankly, I was completely blown away by how she experiences the world. Despite all my years of neuroscience, I'd never even heard of it, to be brutally honest. Now, I'm on my way to do an experiment that promises to give me a deep insight into what she experiences on a day-to-day basis, and it requires one of these.
I'm meeting up with Fiona for an experiment that builds on everything we've learned about empathy and the brain. It's being run by neuroscientist Dr. Lara Meister.
So, what is this experiment all about?
It's an experimental way to mess with this self-other boundary. In normal life, if you see a touch and feel a touch at exactly the same time, chances are you're looking at your own body. So you can imagine if you're looking in a mirror.
Yeah, it's definitely me.
Yep, it's definitely you. So if you're looking in a mirror and you see the face in front of you being touched at the same time that you're feeling a touch on your face, that causes this ownership over what we're looking at.
Okay.
So with this experiment, we're going to mess with that a little bit.
Michael Bannacy discovered that fundamental differences in how Fiona's brain handles her sense of self and other was key to her mirror touch. And now Lara is going to mess with my self-other boundaries.
So a really crucial factor in this self-other distinction is synchrony. The way we decide what is our body and what is not our body is often to do with how we integrate visual and tactile information. And the brain is looking for regularities and it's making predictions based on that input. And therefore we can kind of play around with certain illusions.
You know what? All of this is reminding me of various things, but one of them is virtual reality.
Yeah, exactly. It's playing on this idea of synchrony between different senses.
So if you're seeing something happen out there, and it always corresponds to a feeling that you're getting over here, then your brain can kind of match the two together on the basis of just the unlikelihood of those things always happening at the same time by chance.
Yeah, exactly. Your brain will put 2 and 2 together and make 5.
And just like in Michael Bannacy's mirror touch findings, it's the TPJ which is key to this experiment.
That area appears to kind of control the distinction between self and other. And that area of the brain was found to be active during this illusion.
It's fascinating. I am totally ready to have a go at this thing.
Right, Fiona's up first. Let's see how her mirror touch responds.
You're going to see a short video of a girl being touched on the cheek with a cotton bud.
Okay.
And all I want you to do is keep your eyes on her face and try and keep as still as possible.
Okay.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
Everything we've learned tells us that she should form an empathic connection with the face in the video.
I feel that touch on my face. It's on the left.
And she has.
Wow. You feel like that's your
I
face?
feel like that's my face.
I find that amazing. But it doesn't look anything like you. Doesn't matter.
I feel like I've got hair dangling down the back there.
You can even feel the hair,
Yeah,
the long
feel
hair
the
tickling the back of your
tied up.
neck. That's astonishing. Because I can't.
What do you see?
I just see someone having their face stroked and, like, you know, she blinks, but that's her, not me. That's amazing. I really want to have a go now, see how...
Do you want to sit in the chair?
See how I match up to you.
And now for the real test. Can Lara give me a glimpse into the world through Fiona's eyes?
Your turn.
Yeah, I think I'm going to need a bit of help. I don't think I can do it just by looking.
We're going to do it a bit differently for you. So you're going to be seeing a similar video, this time a guy being stroked on the cheek with a cotton bud. I'm going to stroke you on the cheek at exactly the same time, okay? So I'd like you to keep your eyes on his face the whole time and try and keep as still as possible.
Okay.
Okay? Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Lara carefully times the strokes of her cotton bud to exactly match those in the video.
That's just really weird. Ah!
And now I can really feel the connection.
Fiona, I finally get it. Because now that that's my face...
My TPJ's sense of myself is being scrambled. It's more than empathy, I feel. I've become the man in the video.
When he blinks at the wrong time, it's like, but hang on, I didn't do that. What are you doing?
And just as Fiona found with Michael's hands test, it's confusing.
That was weird. I blinked at the same time as him, and that was even more convincing. But I feel like I can tell what he's thinking a bit, because it's my face. So when the guy was having his face touched, it took a while to kick in, but eventually I felt like that's not just an uncanny coincidence. That's my face being touched in reflection. One level of correspondence, just the touch and vision, is one thing. But then seeing him, his eyes open from the blink, at the same time I feel my eyes open from the blink, having two streams of evidence that that is my face, it meant that I started feeling perhaps a small window into what you feel. Thank you so much, Fiona.
Thank you, John.
And thank you, Lara. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Lara.
Time for a final challenge. Can I apply everything I've learned to boost empathy in a vital setting?
Today, I've come to Torbay, Devon, to meet a team that's using virtual reality technology. But they're not making computer games. This is serious stuff. It's for real-world use, and in particular, for helping doctors to better empathise with their patients.
So welcome to our SimLab, Jack.
Thank you.
Nicholas Perez is a VR engineer who's capturing hospital experiences in 3 dimensions to boost empathy.
I understand you found ways to make the experience that junior doctors have even deeper.
What we were really forgetting, and I think, is the patient perspective, empathy, compassion, communication, all those things. And so that's where my project really started. How can we use the subjective camera to see how the patient feels?
So technically, how do you do that? How do you enable the doctors to see through the patient's eyes?
Well, the point of view camera will sit with the patient. So the minute we start looking at the patient perspectives, the minute we see actually that empathy, that point of view, and the results are looking incredible, actually.
Great. Can I see that kit?
Let's go.
Okay.
Nick places me in a realistic environment, sets me up with a point of view camera rig, and then has me act out a scenario.
So that's going to record everything you're seeing, all that equipment, you're hooked up, so you've got that whole environment going on. This is it, this is your perspective.
Something's grabbing my arm! Something's grabbing my arm! What is this? They've asked me to play the role of a difficult patient, confused as to why they're in hospital. It's a common problem, and one badly in need of empathy.
What is this?
All right, Jack, so I'll take this off now. How did that feel as a patient?
It felt strange. The acting was terrible, but the medical care was superlative.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to take that into the edit. We're going to let those that were treating you have a look from the patient perspective. How's that sound?
Sounds like a great idea.
Cool.
This entire VR method works by manipulating the sense of self and other, seeing the world through other people's eyes to boost empathy.
Visualization is a great way to train your brain for an experience that it maybe hasn't yet been through. And VR is potentially a great way of doing this. The reason that VR works particularly well is because it engages so many senses, essentially giving your brain multiple messages of experiencing that emotion. So it actually has a really powerful effect on your brain and your body.
The training is particularly useful for junior doctors who are learning how to relate to the distressed patients.
Why does it keep hurting me?
Well, it's blowing up and then deflating.
The VR headset shows Dr. Sarah every aspect of my experience.
It's really important that you stay in the bed, Jack. Bring your legs back, Jack. Well done.
Okay.
So what did you think? What did you see? I have no idea really what you saw.
So it's really interesting. So I'm sort of new to the whole idea of virtual reality. I think it gives you a really, really unique perspective that's really difficult to get from anything else, that whole 360 idea. I don't think anything quite prepares you the way that video does about quite how intimidating it is having all these bodies and places looming over you. It gives you this really, really nice thing to be able to step back and watch an entire scenario from start to finish with that whole view. I think it's really unique and could be really helpful.
Our ability to boost empathy within the brain, both the ability to regulate our own emotions and to have compassion for other people's emotions, is very exciting. And with what we know now about how we can learn to do that even in adulthood, it has huge implications for things like healthcare.
How important is empathy for a doctor, really?
It's really important, isn't it? It's almost more than the knowledge base of what things you're treating. I think just to have that feeling, which can be easily lost in such situations, is key.
And that's the powerful thing about virtual reality, is that I can put this headset on and see the world in a different perspective.
So for a moment there, my levels of empathy were cranked up to the degree where I could get a taste of what life is like for Fiona. This really is one of the most exciting new areas of neuroscience research. And in the future, just maybe they'll manage to uncover even more innovative ways of amping up those sparks of empathy in all